Massive big hello to the Facebook community on this incredibly sunny Wednesday. How good is it to have this sun? Hump day, midweek in the sales process. How's your week looking? Are you going to smash your sales numbers? Or are you kind of struggling and thinking, oh God, I need some sales? Obviously, both ends of the spectrum often exist, but you can do stuff to make sure that you're more likely to have one scenario play out for you than the other. Last week, we talked about emotion and the crucial aspect that emotion has to do with actually having someone feel energy in motion and take some action and follow through with what they're wanting to do. Absolutely critical. So that's what we covered last week. Such an important ingredient. Now, of course, the other ingredient here is logic. Logic absolutely needs to be in play when you're having a sales conversation, but a lot of people lose their sales because of logic. So the salesperson that has a lot of product knowledge and loves the product knowledge that they have and how comprehensively they understand what it is that their topic is, that salesperson will very frequently share far too much in too big of content chunks, and they'll lose their prospect as a result. So what you want to do with your content chunks is you want to keep them really small and then check in, then really small and then check in. So a check-in might be, if you know you're talking to somebody, again on the DISC scale, D-I-S-C energy, if you know you're speaking to somebody who's very kinesthetic, you might say, how's that feeling for you? How's that landing for you? Otherwise, if you know that it's more of a D or a C, you'll just say, does that make sense? Whatever the case may be, checking in is quite easy to do. And you just want to check in consistently with your prospect as to whether they're getting value out of the content that you're sharing. Too many salespeople lose a lot of sales in giving huge, big content chunks of logic. Now, if your prospect is only, if you've given a content chunk this big and your prospect was only interested in this bit here and you haven't checked in, then this bit from here to here has been something that they've found boring and tedious and of no value to them. And of course, the sales conversation is all about them. So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand with logic is you want to use the time. So basically when you're conversing and asking questions, you want to use the questions to elicit either logic or emotion, either past or future, either pain or pleasure. And the questions, the precious questions that you spend eliciting logic, ideally will get a digit. When you think logic, I'd like you to think of a digit, because what you want to be able to do is have something to contrast. And if you don't have a digit, if you don't have a number, then there's nothing to contrast. So for example, if you were speaking to a web designer and that web designer was doing 3 websites per month, you've now got some logic. Later in the conversation, you find out what they'd like to be doing, and it might be 5 websites per month. So there's a gap. There's a contrast between the 3 that they are doing and the 5 that they want to do. That's very powerful in a sales conversation to have that. So you don't cover the future for quite a while yet. We're still early in the sales conversation, but you want to get the digits that are relative to how they're feeling at the moment. One of my clients sells camper vans, and the digits that she gets is on a scale of 1 to 10, how overwhelmed are you feeling? So her clients come to her very overwhelmed. Overwhelm is an emotion, and it's very handy in the sales conversation to have them want to buy, but that emotion on its own isn't quantifiable. So what you want to do now is get something that's quantifiable. Okay, cool, I get it. A lot of my clients come to me overwhelmed. Thank you for sharing. I'm kind of curious if 10 was, I'm extremely overwhelmed, I'm just about to throw the towel in on the whole camper van thing as a whole. If that's 10, where would you be sitting at the moment? And let's say they were to share with you that they're sitting at a 7 or an 8, you can record that digit. You've now got something quantifiable. And later in the sales conversation, in about 10, 15 minutes time, when you're at the future and you're talking about how they'd like it to be, based on your product or service and the way that you're engaging with them, they might share with you that their overwhelms at about a 3. That's extremely powerful. You've now got some contrast, some positive association between their experience and how they're finding you. So a couple of things that are really important about logic. Logic is very frequently overrated by a lot of business owners and a lot of salespeople. The only relevant logic is what is important to them. And the only way you can find out what's important to them is through sharing very small content chunks and then checking in with a question to make sure that you are still on point, on track, and relevant in terms of what they are saying. Just remember that, as we've covered in previous weeks, good day, Laura. It's lovely to have you on the call. Remember, as we've covered in previous weeks, you should there's that word should, you should be doing about 70% listening and only about 30% questions. At the most, probably about 75-25. And the way to pull it off is through questions. Talking should be a very minimal part of a sales conversation. Obviously, this is a direct video piece. There's no interaction. But in a sales conversation, it should be about you asking the right questions in the right tone at the right time, and then having them do the talking. And based on what they say to you, then asking the next highly accurate, highly relevant question. So logic, more often than not, will lose you sales. In selling, the devil is in the detail. Yes, details are important, and there is a time and a place for going into detail, but it isn't in that initial sales conversation. Trust me on that. If you've got any questions, absolutely let me know. It's my pleasure to help you. All you need to do is pop in a comment and I'll be at your assistance. If there's anything else I can do to help, just say the word. And it is Wednesday, guys, a lovely sunny Wednesday. Have a cracking finish to the week in sales.